So in my opinion, this is one of the most interesting aspects of Jujutsu Kaisen at the moment, and that's the prospect of what Yuji's curse technique could be. And of course, I know that Gojo says that Yuji is unable to use Jujutsu, therefore he does not have an innate technique, but I think that might not be the case, and in fact, we may have possibly already seen Yuji use his curse technique, and maybe even multiple times at this point. But in order to talk about that, I'm gonna have to go into manga spoilers. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen past season 1 of the anime, I suggest you check out now. So as I'm sure a lot of you are aware by now, and you've probably put the pieces together yourself if you've read through the series at this point, that, the popular opinion is that Yuji may have some kind of ability that manipulates one's memories. So long story short, Yuji's curse technique, may or may not be memory manipulation, or as I think the popular fan term at this point is false memories. Now, before I go any further into this, let me just establish that this is all speculation. Currently at this point within the series, it has not been revealed that Yuji has a curse technique yet. And also there's a lot of variables that could be going into what Yuji's technique or ability may or may not be. But first, let me go over the 2 major instances of us possibly seeing this ability at play. So in chapter 35, when Todo is going against Yuji, Todo's basically already beaten Yuji very quickly at this point, and there seems to be no way for Yuji to win considering how much more powerful Todo is. And at this point, Todo asks Yuji his iconic question, what type of girl do you like? And then Yuji says tall girls with big butts like Jennifer Lawrence. And then at this moment, something snaps within Todo, and the narration says, at that moment, a memory was born inside Todo's brain of a past event that never happened. Todo then goes on to believe that he and Yuji were like best friends in school. It's so overwhelming to him that he just stops in his place and starts crying and says it seems that we're best friends. And when I originally read this, I thought maybe this was just a funny moment, showing that Todo's just a strange dude, because clearly he is. He's been portrayed to be such even before this sequence. But that apparently is not the case, because that brings us to the second instance of us seeing memory manipulation happening. And that's at the end of chapter 105, after Choso has basically defeated Yuji. Before Choso's about to do his, final killing blow, he says, when you get to the other side, be sure to ask for my brother's forgiveness. And then, just like with Todo, something snaps within Choso. And once again, we get the same narration, saying at that moment, a memory was born inside Choso's brain of a past event that never happened. Except this time, instead of thinking that Yuji is his best friend, like with Todo, Choso now believes that Yuji is straight up his little brother. And he sees this memory of him, Yuji, and his other brothers, having a picnic or something. So it was at this point when I was okay, so that wasn't a gag moment with Todo. This is something that is actually happening. But anyway, going further with Todo and Choso's false memories, even currently to this day within the story, they still believe these memories. It hasn't worn off or faded or anything like that. Todo still believes that Yuji is his best friend from school, and Choso still firmly believes that Yuji is his younger brother. In fact, in the latest chapter 138, Yuji straight up tells Choso that hey, I killed your brothers, and Choso's hey, it's okay. I'm sure they'd understand. You're my brother, it's all good. So this is some really deep, powerful memory manipulation going on here. Okay, so now that we've established the 2 possible instances of this ability at play, so let's try to make some sense of this. Where did this come from? How is Yuji able to do this? So there's a few possibilities. Now, going back to what I said in the beginning of the video, Gojo does say that Yuji cannot use Jujutsu, therefore he doesn't have an innate technique. But after that, he does say that in due time, your body will learn Sukuna's curse technique. And it's a possibility that what Yuji is doing with memory manipulation could be related to Sukuna's abilities. Now, currently within the story, we also don't know what Sukuna's curse technique is. He kind of teases it to Jogo, but then he says, I'm not going to reveal it. Now, just like Jogo says in that sequence, we assumed up until this point that Sukuna's technique was slashing and cutting and that stuff with cursed energy, but I guess that's not it, because it also seems like Sukuna has some kind of flame fire powers too, right? And added on to that, we've just never seen Sukuna use some kind of like memory manipulation or anything really like that yet. Another thing that points to this possibly not being Sukuna's technique is the instance where Choso, is overcome by this. Right before Choso gets triggered, we see Sukuna like in Yuji's mind. He's like, to think you'd lose to such an inferior opponent, and then Sukuna's eyes like light up and he's confused by what's going on at this moment. So this is an ambiguous moment, of course. This could either be Sukuna confused as to what's happening because he legitimately doesn't understand it, or he's like, oh, you just tapped into my ability possibly. So there's like another weird instance of like mental stuff going on with Sukuna, I guess, and that's right before he kills Jogo. Some kind of sequence happens where he goes into like this, I don't even know what to call it, some kind of like mind space or something, where Jogo sees Hanami and Dagon, and he has like this one final like emotional moment with them. But then also Sukuna is in this space as well, and Jogo like starts crying and he says, what is this? And then Sukuna says, don't ask me, I don't know what that is either. So based off of that, I guess there's something going on here that not even Sukuna is aware of, and it's a possibility that that may have happened because Sukuna is using Yuji's body as a vessel, of course. And maybe the reverse of what Gojo was talking about is happening. Like, Gojo said that, in time you'll learn Sukuna's curse technique, but maybe we're seeing Sukuna learning Yuji's technique or something. And that being said, maybe Yuji's curse technique is manifesting because he is the vessel of Sukuna. Like maybe he's drawing from Sukuna, and I don't know, maybe there's like this new phenomenon happening where he's creating his own curse technique because of this unusual circumstance possibly. But now let's go to another instance of the possible birth of this technique. And that's gonna bring us all the way back to chapter 1 when we see Yuji talking to his grandfather before he dies. His grandpa's like, hey, I have some final words. I wanna talk to you about your parents. And Yuji's like, I don't care, I don't want to hear about it. So, that also still establishes that there's still some hidden significance to Yuji's past, his parents, which I'm sure will happen later on. He is a shonen MC after all, so usually the parents are always kind of tied to the greater significance of a character. So maybe his parents were sorcerers or something, and they had some kind of crazy memory manipulation curse technique or something like that. I mean, it's always a possibility that that could be the case. But there's another possibility that could have been born out of this sequence. And that's because the last thing that Yuji's grandpa says before he dies is, when it's your time to go, make sure you're surrounded by others. Don't end up like me. And then he dies. So that right there could have possibly put some kind of curse on Yuji, and that created this technique possibly. And that kind of lines up with at least one of the instances where we see this happening with Choso, because, at that moment, Yuji was seemingly going to die, right? But with Todo, he wasn't exactly about to die, but he certainly had no business winning that fight. But that could also go back to what Yuji's grandpa says a little before he dies. And he says, you're a strong kid, so help people. It doesn't have to be all the time, just whenever you can. You may feel lost, don't expect gratitude, just help them. And I think in the two instances where we see the memory manipulation happen, I guess you could say in a way Yuji is helping his opponents here. With Todo, he's correctly answered the question, about what's your type of girl. And I guess that is helping Todo, right? I mean, it's what he was always looking for, someone who shared his exact taste in women, and also in a way giving Todo like a friend, because I guess Todo really didn't have any friends up until this point because, he was so weird and overbearing. And then with Choso, he was kind of just bent on getting revenge for his brother. And when the moment finally came where he's about to kill Yuji and finally get the revenge he was looking for, I guess that could be Yuji helping him, and then that triggers the memory manipulation. So in a way, that could be the trigger for this technique possibly. Yuji coming close to death or just being vastly overpowered by his opponent and either helping them or having them feel satisfied or something like that. And then once these conditions are met, the ability activates and their memories are manipulated, and then in some way they gain this affinity for Yuji. And that also plays into, when it's your time to go, make sure you're surrounded by others. But also, this memory manipulation, false memory stuff, it's not unheard of. There are other battle anime characters that have had this ability, such as Tsukishima from Bleach. He more or less straight up had this ability. And aside from the creator Akutami, professing that he is a fan of Bleach, we could straight up just see the influence that Bleach has had on Jujutsu Kaisen. So I wouldn't say it's too far-fetched to think that he was influenced by this ability, maybe. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this one. I'm sure there's more to what this could be, the origins and everything, but right now, just speculating, trying to gather as much information as we have at the moment. But let me know what you think about this. Do you think this is Yuji's curse technique? What do you think's going on with this? Let me know in the comments, and if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.